Welcome again to episode 2 of the Problem Solved podcast. And today I'm lucky enough to be talking to Tye Alroe from Alroe Constructions.
Hey Matt, thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming, mate. I'm actually excited about this podcast. I feel like you've got a really good story to share. And I kind of wanted to dive deep today.
Yeah, cool.
Hopefully nothing will be off limits.
Yeah.
But I think that from what I've seen and bumping into you, because our offices are close together, so bumping into you every now and again and understanding more of your story, it's been quite a phenomenal rise in a very short period of time, not without its challenges. So we might start off with maybe touching on Alroe Constructions for those who don't know, and sort of what you guys do, what projects you're working on at the moment, and then I'll dive deep.
Cool. So it's funny, a lot of people say we've done it really quickly, and you just said it then in the intro. And when I look back at it now, when I first left school in year 12, I went out to my family business, or my uncle's business, at the Rockley Fruit Markets in Brisbane. I was living in Brisbane at the time. And I was meant to be taking over the business. It's like a 50-year-old business, and it's a wholesaling business to Woolworths and Coles, very successful. And I did that for 6 months, and it was like start at midnight. You know, I'm 18 years old now, and I was going out, and it just wasn't the right fit, and I didn't really like the sort of, I don't know, the vibe of the place. So I kind of left there and sort of walked away from the family business. And then I become a blockies labourer for a block layer for 2 years, from being 18 to 20. And at the time I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was playing football, and I was pretty keen to try to make football my career for the first 10 years of my life.
Is that rugby league?
Yeah. I had a Melbourne Storm contract and other things, and, you know, still just playing lower grades, but like that was my goal, and I was very committed to that. And then obviously turned 18 and sort of started partying and did the things that you do, and that fell away to the wayside. I just wasn't that into it anymore. I committed so hard through my juniors, and then I kind of got over it for some reason. And then that's when I left the blockies labouring role and become a carpenter, like an apprentice carpenter for a builder. And again, didn't really know where I wanted to go at that point in my life. And then at the age of 23, finished my carpentry apprenticeship. And typical me, I seen a few of my older mates sort of working for themselves as subcontractors, as carpenters, and they seemed to be making all this money. Like at the time, I was only making $500 a week. So I was like, they're making $2,000 a week, $3,000 a week, and sort of like loving it. So I thought, you know what, I'll just give that a go as well. So I got an ABN and a sole trader and started doing subcontracts with other builders as a carpenter.
Yep. Doing
frames and cladding and fix-outs and all that kind of stuff. Looking back at it now, so I was 23 at the time, or 22 even, I can't remember exactly my age at the time, but very, very young, sort of had no idea about business. A lot of mistakes, probably wasn't ready either to run a carpentry business at the time, looking back at it.
Hard business to run.
Very hard, builders, especially back in those days, were really tough. Variations were never paid. It was like, here's your purchase order, you just got to get it finished kind of thing. And
you also had, from what I understand, you also injured yourself too.
Yeah, so I fell off a roof when I was 24. Double-storey house, no scaffold up, builder. Looking back at it, could have sued him and got a lot of money, didn't sue him, just took it on the chin and broke my 10th and 11th vertebrae in my back. At the time I was surfing heaps, couldn't surf anymore after that accident for a long time, and then I've had problems ever since that. I walked out of the hospital that night. It wasn't like I was in a wheelchair or nothing, but it was an external fracture, and that was the moment where I was like, I can't sort of stay on the tools anymore because I have to.
That was the driving factor.
That was that was a big moment in my life, how I changed where I was heading, and I still didn't really know what I wanted to do. I had my own little business, and it was like, I thought I was making money, but all I was doing was spending my tax and GST and everything that you do when you're young. And so, you know, I racked up a pretty decent tax bill for that from a young age. And anyway, I got that paid off. And when that incident happened, I was like, all right, I've got to become a builder now. Like, that's the next thing. And so I was 24, 25, got my builder's license. And being 25 years old, so young, just couldn't get a client to save myself to build a new house, right? Because every time I'd have a potential lead come in, had no sales and marketing sort of strategy.
Yeah, right.
It was just like have coffees with real estate agents, talk shit for, a half an hour, and nothing would go anywhere. And then, fortunately enough, I met a lady called Tanya Douglas in Bulimba in Brisbane, and me and her become really good friends. She was a fair bit older than me, probably 15 years older than me at the time, and she must have just seen something in me, and then she's introduced me to a man that lived in Bulimba. He obviously knew that I was young and dumb and probably wanted the cheapest price at the time for his house. Anyway, got the opportunity and built his house, and it was probably one of the nicest houses I've still built today.
Yeah, right. Because you started off in that custom.
Yeah, custom high-end sort of
yeah.
homes. No renos or nothing, just homes, and then.
Gee, so you went straight to the big leagues.
Yeah, so that was like literally as we speak today. 2025? We finished that house in 2020, 13, 14. So we've only really been building for 10 years if you go by that date.
Wow.
Before that, it was just like carpentry contracts and things like that. So to go from a house that was worth 600 grand, no staff, to we're going to turn over 100 mil this year and do probably 5 high rises and have 60 people working for us.
It's incredible.
Across multiple businesses as well, not just the construction company. Has been probably fast when you do talk about that, but I always look back about when I was like 19, 20, and like I'm 38 now, 39 this year, so close to 20 years in business. It still feels like a long time, but really the construction company
it's 10 years.
It's been 10 years, so.
But your growth's been very sustainable.
Yeah, there's been some hiccups. Probably 3 times I've gone, fuck, this is pretty gnarly. 2 of the times probably inexperience, and then the other time was out of my control, and I'm happy to go into that down the track. But what I have learned out of those experiences, when you kind of rock bottom and you've got to find a way, you just got to keep on showing up and not give up. And you can give up and start again if you want, but there was never an option for me. I didn't want to fail. I felt like I failed at football because I gave up on that. And for me, I wanted to make this building company and development company now very successful, not from a money point of view, but from a reputation point of view. And I can probably put my hand on my heart today that everything we've built to date is we've got a pretty good name for ourselves. And if it's not good enough at my own house, it's not good enough for our end users' house, and that's our motto that I try to drive through the business, because not everyone's like that in the business, so you got to make sure that standard's always there. It's been a fun journey, but stressful at the same time.
So your first, I suppose, if we can call it a sliding doors moment, was probably that second project.
Yeah, so the one at Bulimba, I did it for a well-known developer now. Like, he's quite large these days, and I won't call the name out, but probably just was not ready for that job at that time. Went into a sort of a mid-sized development company. I was by myself with one person part-time, and they just kind of see me coming right and just line me up. And I lost 600 grand on that job. And
that was 10 years ago.
Yeah, so for having no money and I had a property at the time, so I had to sell my house, the whole lot, get rid of all my assets to stay alive and start again. Obviously, I was young, so I sort of shook it off, and estimating's never been my biggest strength personally, like into the detail. I'm very good at summarising things and looking over things, but when it's me counting door handles and bloody, door stops and things like that, I've got ADHD and I've got dyslexia. So they're the 2 things you just don't want to be doing, is estimating. So the first staff member I brought in was an estimator, and he stayed with me for nearly 6 to 7 years.
Still with you now?
No, he's not. Oh. He's now got his own building company.
Oh, there you go.
So, yeah.
Yeah, good. So, I mean, that was probably your first major hiccup in business, you would say?
Yeah, just thinking that it was easier than what it was, and the detail is the secret of being super successful in development and building. If it's not a FISO, not being detailed on a FISO, or not being detailed on an estimate, it can burn you, right? Yeah. And you can't change it after it's done. So it's that was a big lesson learned at that point.
So what was the main thing that made you keep going in that situation? Like, that's a pretty because you would have been early 20s or mid 20s at that
Mid
point in time.
20s, yeah.
It's pretty scary.
I tell you something. I was living in the Goldie at that point in time, and I was driving up from the Gold Coast to Brisbane every morning with a good couple of mates of mine who were working for me, just labouring. And I was like telling the boys that I'm losing 20 grand a day every time I drive from Brisbane to here, because I knew about the loss early in the job. So it wasn't like I got to the end of the job. It was like, oh my God, I've lost this. I knew it. Like I hit my contract value at third into the job. So that was just like a mental thing that I just had to get through and go, listen, I'm just going to get to the end of this job and sell my house as quick as possible, because I wasn't liquid. I had the asset, but I wasn't liquid.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people that helped me through that journey that are still good friends of mine today that are very successful.
Stuck with you.
You would know a few of the guys. They're doing their own things these days. And, you know, I got to hold hat off from them just to help me to get through that, because I didn't have the experience of what to do and how it was all going to go down. So, you know, I'm very grateful for those people.
That's almost like a training ground.
For sure.
Because what I've learned is sometimes you just got to pick yourself up every morning and get to work.
Yeah, definitely.
And you just sit there in it.
Yeah.
And you work through it, even though it's uncomfortable. Like,
yeah.
You know,
it's funny you say that. There's a saying that I said to someone the other day. It's like, you got to get comfortable for being uncomfortable. Because really, building, developing, you're just never comfortable, right? And the day you think you are there,
that's when it gets
something hits you again. So, which has taken me a lot of years to get comfortable. Like, you know, you talk about anxiety and depression and all that other stuff. Like, you know, I throw 15 builders on the table right now that are going through tough challenges, and I could understand it, because I was a part of a building sort of group of people that were sort of getting mentored with me at the time. And there's just so many stories of, you know, loss of money, and they got to sell their houses, and they've all got families, and, you know, it's a tough game.
It's the risk, right? So what industry deals with the level of risk? As a builder, you go to work, and there is it's risk management.
It's risk management.
It's a business of risk management.
And that risk management lasts for 6 years, right?
Yeah.
So you can make 100 grand on a job, and then you could lose 200 grand by the time it's because there's a mistake or there's a leak or whatever. So really making sure that if I did the journey again, I probably wouldn't do the same path I went down. And that's me being really frank. There was a lot of growth there really quickly, especially through 2018 to 2021. I went from 6 staff to 50 staff. I went from 10 million to 40 million. And if you speak to any accounting firm, the 30 million sort of 10 to 50 sort of gully takes a lot of builders down, because that's just like a death trap through that, because you don't have the systems in place, you're doing the turnover.
Yeah, the risk just jumps up significantly.
Oh, for sure.
Because the numbers
for sure. Yeah. And me looking back at that now, I was probably a bit too young and dumb again, thinking what I was going into. Now I've learnt what I've learnt. I probably wouldn't do that again if I didn't know what I was doing. Now, if I did know if I had to start a new company up today, I would do the growth, because I've got the systems and everything behind me. But, mate, 5-6 years ago, I didn't have it, right? And
but I feel like that's why you sometimes have to go through that stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
Because now your business is, you know, bulletproof in those areas.
Yeah, definitely.
And you've got the systems in place to because of that experience.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. And when you get bigger as a company, and it'd be like any business, you attract better staff and more experienced staff.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest thing that I've seen for Alroe the last 2 years is, you know, the staff depth of what they've done in their own careers is impressive,
yeah.
You know. So very grateful to have those guys and girls, ladies in the business. But, you know, they've come here for a reason. I think there's a purpose behind what we're trying to do, and they want to be a part of the journey.
Yep. So throughout your journey, you would have had obviously things that you would have had to learn and control, put systems and processes in place. But then COVID comes along, right? And did you have another sort of sliding doors moment in during COVID?
Yeah. So COVID for us, 2 things I learned out of that: don't have your eggs in one basket.
Yeah.
Okay, that's my first lesson. I was doing a lot of work for the one developer. He got caught quite dramatically, kind of put us under a lot of pressure as well. So that was the first lesson. So always spread your workload across multiple external companies. The second thing is, and I love my subbies. I'm not here to write any subbies off, but they just seen the dollars and went for it.
Yep.
So where the main cost increases come from was the labour.
Yep.
Not the materials. Materials were definitely going up through a year and a half of the COVID period.
But not as much as labour.
Not the labour.
Yeah.
And I was just having guys walking off jobs going, we're not doing this job anymore. We're going to do this job because it's got another 100 grand more in it or whatever it was. And just the loyalty sort of dropped out of the market. And I'm all about loyalty, right? Like my team's very contract driven and commercially driven and all that. I'm still old school. If you're here, you're here. And if you're doing a job, you're doing a job. And a lot of people just didn't do that. And I probably lost a fair few relationships through that process because we're still at the same stage where I was very involved with the construction arm through 21. So ensuring that you got plenty of coverage across your trade base, that was another thing. We were going to one or two subbies and using them on 4 or 5 jobs at a time.
And relying on them.
Yeah, that's right, because we just come from that sort of younger business to more of a medium-sized business. They were the two main things, in my opinion, that I've learned from that point of view, and get our contracts and our subcontracts and all those things way tighter and talking to each other. And only work for people with the same values. And we've done that now. So the last say 2 years, 18 months, we've really stopped working for a lot of people that we were working for, not for any different reasons. We just weren't in line anymore. We were in line at one point, and you know,
it's changed.
Our direction went different. Their direction went different, and we're really I'd say picky who we're going to work with, and we do a lot of ECIs as you know, and an ECI might feel like you got the job, but you don't have the job until you sign a contract, but you got to work for these people for like 2 or 3 years, so that you just got to be on the same page, you know.
So what I like about your process and the way you're structuring your business is that ECI process, but you're setting it up to really take them through each stage, and now you've got the sales and marketing arm to support them. So you've created a platform, a fully integrated platform that someone can plug into.
Correct.
So I think that's really powerful in the current market. And it also allows you to, make those decisions based on values and make those decisions. What job suits us. It puts you in a better position, which ultimately means that you're in a stronger position across the business, which allows you to then help the client more.
For sure. And the reason why we went down that path, because a lot of people might think that we're trying to like get greedy or whatever. It's definitely not that. For one, we got our own development arm, so that offsets all those elements, right? Yep. I was lucky enough to meet a lot of people through my journey the last 10 years that are now in business with me within those different arms. And I still believe today that some of those off-the-plan sales guys, my 2 business partners, are some of the best in the market, right, in Madison Road. But where I was finding the dramas on the construction side that we were having through 22, 23 was I would do the ECI, and then they haven't got the sales advice right, they haven't got the finishes right, they haven't got the floor plates right, they haven't done all this stuff right, and they're relying on 3, 4, 5, 6 different companies to all come together, and it just wasn't organic. It was very like, but you just need to do it for that price now. And so the reason why I brought that whole vertically integrated approach into the business was to protect the construction company for not wasting 12 months of an ECI process and then not actually building it, because we weren't involved with the sales, marketing, and everything else.
Well, it's risk management.
For sure.
Because the time the bill or the internal cost of you doing that ECI for 12 months, like what?
For 10 grand a month, I think we charge between 10 and 15 grand a month, depending on how big the job is, and most go for 6 to 8 months, right? Yep. So they might be in for 60 to 100 grand. Now, they can leave at any time at the back end of that, or they can leave through the process if they don't think there's value. But that's never happened. But where I see it, every time we do a design meeting, and we do it either weekly or fortnightly, depending where the job's at, majority of the time, the sales and marketing team sitting in that meeting.
To get it right.
Yep. We've got the interior designers in there, we've got the architects in there, and we've got all the consultants that do refer to finishing trades and things in there. Yeah, it might be a bit boring for certain people, but everyone's involved, making sure that we've got a 26-story tower in Broadbeach that we're going to be starting in 4 months' time, Surf Parade. It's a JV with another developer. We've done this process, and we've turned his fees over for being 6% up to 24%.
Yeah, it's awesome.
In this market is unheard of, and that's come from making setbacks bigger, going back in for other changes, and all the things that have to happen because the DA wasn't done correctly at the start before we weren't involved. And so we're very involved before the DA goes in. So I've got multiple jobs right now with current clients that we've worked for in the past that we're working on the design with BDA or Plus or whoever it is in the market to make sure that, one, we got the costings right, and two, we've got the sales and marketing on board before we even lodge for a DA.
So I think where the market's going at the moment, that's critical, because you not only have to have an efficient design, you not only have to make sure your design's compliant.
That's right.
But now you've got such an intelligent market and an astute investor who you're selling to. Your product mix and your product design has to be on point.
Yes.
And that has to be thought of before your DA.
Exactly right.
So it needs to. So it's the same with us, mate. We'll get engaged in jobs and the sales contracts are wrong, or the spec in the sales contract doesn't match what's in the construction documentation, or the product needs to change, and then we need to go back for a new DA.
That's right.
So that's what I love about your business model is you've set it up to de-risk it
for sure
for your ideal client.
And we're never perfect. No one's ever perfect, right? So there's always things that we can be better at. But what we try to do is make sure the transparency is there for the end user. So when you're selling off plan, you want to make sure that buyer's getting that skirting board, getting that thing, oven, whatever it is, or the square set ceilings, or the curtain recesses in the ceiling. The reason why we went down the marketing arm and branding arm with the renders and everything that we're doing, the 3D renders, is because I was getting sick and tired of getting told that we haven't built it right because the renders show this and the plans show this. Or I'm not building off renders, I'm building off plans.
Correct.
Right? So
and you're the builder, so you're not responsible.
That's right.
Yeah.
But there's always frustration, and someone's either let down, and it's normally the buyer, and then they got the shits and whatever. So that model was never for us to make money out of. And another thing, it's very expensive. So the market was charging $5,000 a renders or whatever it was, $3,000 a render at the time. We can do it for like 2.5 a render. It's cheap, and we whack in 10 extra renders. So for us, it's not the profit out of that project, that part of the business. It's more to make sure that the sales team, the developer, and the end user, and the builder all have the same documentation. So when there's a design change through design development, we're updating the render at the same time. So it all talks to each other. It's like coordination with the other consultants. The rendering's just another part of it.
Yeah.
That's the big thing that we're trying to get better at.
Yeah, and it's actually, it benefits your reputation.
For sure.
Because the end product is right.
For sure.
And that satisfaction and meeting expectations on the back end can only enhance your reputation.
And I think that over COVID, when price increases were going through the roof and there was value management coming through the market because the construction was going through the roof and whatever, I think the buyer has lost trust in the process of paying a deposit and getting what they've seen at the meeting.
Yep.
And then what they're getting at the end of the project.
And the level of due diligence they're doing on the team.
Yeah.
Right? Who designed it, who's building it, who's funding it, who's managing it is at an all-time high in our experience.
100%. Yeah. And I'm seeing the sales really pulling. It's not as good as it was 2 years ago.
It isn't, yeah.
It's definitely slowed down. And the reason why it's slowed down, for one, is affordability, and two, I just don't think there's that many more buyers in the market, and they're being more picky in what they're taking, because now they're all paying $3 to $5 million for units. Well, they want it to be A grade. The 2 million range is gone.
Correct.
On beachside anyway.
So there's a level of finish. Is needs to be spot on for that price range. And that's one thing we're struggling with on our jobs, is getting, the defects that we're picking up. The level of quality has just, I feel, has maybe dropped since COVID. I don't know if you've experienced that.
Defects is always a hard one, because the subbies have a young generation coming through that haven't been taught correctly. So that's going to get worse and worse, in my opinion. Again, it's about the management through the process with the ITPs. Everyone's got ITPs, but do they actually use them, and do they actually do it properly?
And will they make that transparent? So on all our jobs now, it's like, I want to see your ITPs. I want to see the process that what do you mean? It's like, no, I actually want to see you've gone through and done it. because I know that if you have done it properly and you are following it and your ITPs are good,
Yeah.
it's going to help us on the back end.
And that's great that you guys are doing that, because
Yeah.
not many, development companies do that when they're managing client-side projects.
Market's changed.
It has, man.
So you've got to,
Yeah, that's right.
So, mate, so one of the key things that I wanted to ask you is, we went through COVID and so we had obviously the material increase and everyone was focusing on the material increase, but that was an 18-month thing.
Yeah.
Right. And it was actually quite easy to manage from a costing point of view, because you could track, you could track your finishes and the key supply items.
Sure.
What sort of went under the radar for a while and is still probably, I don't think, getting enough attention is labour.
For sure.
And what you touched on earlier about guys coming to site going, I'm getting paid more down the road, and just, even though there's a signed contract in place, they were just walking down the road.
Yeah.
So that has come out of the market a little bit. So timeframes we're finding are coming down to, I suppose, be more what it used to be.
Pre-COVID,
things are still taking longer because productivity is low, but we're not getting that amount of uncertainty in the construction program as we used to.
For sure.
But labour rates, I'm still seeing issues with labour rates. And I just wanted to ask you what you're seeing and where you think that's going.
Yeah, labour rates are definitely, like traffic control, for example. And these days, traffic control is a big number on most jobs, right?
It's more than the architect.
Yeah, definitely. So it's probably doubled in the last 3 or 4 years. Labourers itself, so just having general labour through the labour hire companies has increased. And again, going back to scope and making sure that the subbies cleaning up after themselves, is everyone's so busy, so they're not cleaning at the end of the day, right? So we've had to just, it's in their scope to do so, but we like to keep a tidy site, because tidy site means you get a good quality at the back end. You're not having scratched floors and scratched cabinetry and doors and glass and all the stuff. So it's hard to control that labour component. When it comes to supply and the install, like a plumber or a electrical company or CMP or whatever, the numbers on site's the problem.
Yes.
So that's where the problem, it's actually not the number, the price. The price is probably plateaued.
It's the productivity.
It's productivity. So if I wanted to do a jump in, say, 10 days, it's taking 13, 14.
One thing I've observed, and it sort of leads into that, is, 7, 8 years ago, I used to walk on site and I used to see a high level of apprentices on site.
Yeah.
Now, they were beneficial to the productivity because they would boost numbers and they would do the sort of the uncomplicated tasks.
For sure.
We've got apprentice rates are down by 50%, something crazy.
Yeah.
Does that lead into what you're saying? How?
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. If you think about it, if a fully qualified tradesman has to go to the ute because he's forgot a tool and he's on the 20th story, it takes him half an hour.
Yeah.
Right, and they're getting paid $100 an hour. So, but the product. I'll start again. The output they get being at the truck is less. So when they're on site 8 hours and on site 8 hours for the whole day, you get way more output. But I've just finished one at the Mermaid Albatross Ave. It's a medium-sized project, only 5 stories, 8 units. Now we're probably 3 months delayed there, and that's one of our own projects. Mm-hmm. All my other projects are all pretty good, and they're all on time. Now, I look at that and try to summarise why that's happened. And I look at it, and then one, it's weather, and we haven't probably built to the weather. So what I mean by the weather, a lot of builders, including us, and we're trying to change the ways we do things as well so we can get around the weather part. But when you do your basement, you're trying to get the podium, and then you just want to keep on going up.
Yeah.
Instead of trying to do all the planter boxes around the outside, all the fences around the outside, get them all waterproofed and tiled and finished so they're not exposed to the weather at the back end. So at Mermaid, we've been exposed to the weather at the back end on that project externally on podium and rooftop.
Because you didn't do that.
Because I didn't do that, right? Because
Yeah,
we're trying to just rush it, not rush, but just try to get it to top out.
Yep.
And looking back at that now, it's probably cost us 2 months, and it's not because of us not performing, it's the weather. So whenever it rains overnight, I couldn't waterproof the next day
Yeah.
because the blocks are soaking or wet, or the planter box is wet. So you'd have to give it a day to dry out, and then all of a sudden it rains for an
weather
hour,
again.
you know? So
Yeah.
you're just always getting pushed down the road. So we're changing our build methodology to suit the weather, because I feel like the weather's getting worse, not better.
Yep.
Everyone said we had the wettest 2 years from 2020 to 2022. I reckon we've had nearly close to 20 wet days this year.
Yep.
Since Christmas.
Yep. And that is actually, if I were to average it across the projects in our office, it's actually more.
Yeah, maybe it's more.
Yeah.
Like rough guess.
Across all the projects.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Cyclone weather's come in now.
Yeah.
Like, when's the last time we had a cyclone here? So where we've been having issues as well is on jobs where there was no dewatering needed because the water table was lower, and because all this rain's happened,
It's pushed
up. Now we've
Yeah.
got dewatering on the jobs.
Yeah.
So, you know, once upon a time, if it was a half a metre below your slab or your footing, you're okay. Now you kind of got to, like, just in case it's, you know, don't have it there, but have it ready to go.
Ready to go, yeah.
And have more potholes across the side as well, which is another
check
big
the
one.
soil.
You know, and that's a big one that I'm really bringing into the front end of Alroe with our developers and our own projects, is when we're doing a DD on a site to see if it stacks up or not, we will go down the soil test path to have it part of the DD package and process, because we want to make sure that the water tables aren't too high, and what piling system we can use on the boundaries.
Yep.
Okay, so we all know secant's expensive. For this mid-sized building stuff like the fin and the 4-level, 5-level stuff, you really can't get away with a secant pile and make it stack. Like the land prices are too expensive. The build prices are still up there. So when you start adding these basement costs in, it just doesn't stack, right? So we've had to get more smarter on how we build basements and using the screw pile and the sheet system behind it, because you can't do any more sheet piles anymore and drive them down into the ground on the Gold Coast. So the council's making it harder and harder to make us do smaller developments, and this is half the reason why Alroe was going to niche ourselves in that kind of 10 to 20 million space up to sort of 5, 6 stories or 8 stories. But it's really unaffordable to develop in that space now.
It's like the market's moved past it.
Yeah, it has.
And it's a pity, because the Gold Coast, you know, the opportunity for jobs and the opportunity to take the pressure off that demand, the supply issue at the moment.
Yeah.
Those type of jobs are perfect.
For sure.
Because they're de-risked. They're done within 12 months.
They're not a tier 1 contractor
Not a
either.
tier 1
so they're a tier 3, tier 2, you know, at best.
And it's helping the smaller businesses pick themselves up after COVID.
For
And it's
sure.
helping those guys starting out branch out into that next tier.
Yeah.
It's the feeding ground for the whole industry.
I've seen this happen when we first started working with developers. We were doing a lot of 4-packs.
Yep.
3-story 4-pack townhouses. And we really owned that space for 2 years, I think, and then some other smaller guys come through, but they just don't stack up anymore.
They don't.
Like, I rarely see a 4-pack stack up. It's funny enough, I see a couple of duplexes now stacking up for some weird reason, but the 4-packs aren't stacking up, and it's kind of now happening in the 6 to 8 unit space with a basement.
Yep.
So, you know, there's not much land around on the Goldie unless you knock over houses and whatever else. The land price is still expensive. Everyone thinks they've got a developing site, so they put their prices up by 30%. But what that's really doing is knocking off the margin for the developer to be able to develop it. I've had 10 people since Christmas come to Alroe to build a mermaid. 4-story, 1 per floor.
One basement.
Yep. They lose $2 million. Yep.
And
It's just like,
it's
and
a
they've
shame.
bought the site, and I'm like, mate, like, you need to speak to someone before you go and do these things. And I'm worried that the market, some of these developers will do the jobs thinking they can still do it, and they don't, and then they can't sell it. Like, I've seen a massive slowdown in sales since Christmas across our stuff. And again, it's affordability, I think, and
it's the uncertainty as well.
For sure.
Overseas.
For sure, definitely.
Yeah, and it's a pity, because the Gold Coast sort of prided itself on that 1-level basement.
Yeah.
With the small unit development, you know.
Yeah.
4-pack, 6-pack, 8-pack, and I think given the level of the level of productivity and how that's dropped, your labour rates, but then also the red tape.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's sort of the elephant in the room in the industry at the moment.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a funny time.
Yeah. So, mate, what's your take on where do you think the next, let's go maybe short 3 to 5 years?
Yeah.
Where do you see the industry locally heading, and where are you hedging it?
Good question. I've been hunting for new sites the last 12 months and I can't find anything, right? That's worth doing. And I think it's worth to say that we just won't go and do a site to do a site. And that's why we're still doing 50% or 60% of client work and 40% of our own stuff. But obviously affordability is a big thing. So I think we need to work out a way how we can make that happen. I'm looking at a project right now with a developer in Varsity Lakes. They've bought the land quite well, $3 million, $4 million, something like that, but they can put 130 units on it.
Yeah, wow.
So when you look at those numbers, it kind of starts stacking up, right? They've engaged us before DA. Big developer, not a small developer by any means, from Brisbane, and are paying our service to be involved before DA submission. It had a DA on it already for student accommodation for the Bond Uni, and it's getting changed back to res. But I think that's where it needs to head. Can we do bulk of that? I don't think so. Because what happens is you do one site in that area and then all the neighbours hear about the site getting bought for that and what you can do on it, and then all of a sudden their prices go up. Yeah. So, it's a hard one to say. I try to look 2-3 years ahead as well. It's a hard one. I thought this year was going to slow down personally and have a bit of an adjustment with the subbies coming right back, but it just seems like there's a lot of high rises about to start. That's the feel that I'm happening on the coast. There's a lot of developers that I talk to over either bringing builders up from Sydney, Melbourne to start businesses, or Hutchies might come back in the market. I've heard there's all this stuff that who knows, but it all depends. If that does happen, then we're going to have another 2.0 COVID price increase.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of infrastructure work still floating around. And there's the noise about the Olympics, which is sucking resources.
Yes.
But I think, I agree with you. I think the key for the industry on the Gold Coast is how many of these jobs are going to kick off. And they're not the small jobs, they're the bigger jobs.
Yeah.
And they're sucking,
for sure.
How many spare resources are
how many builders are in the Class 2 space building, let's say 6 stories and up? It'd be hard to even say 15.
Oh, I mean, you can probably count one, less than two hands.
Developers are trying to build themselves as well, and I take my hat off to them, but it took me 10 years to set up a building company, not 2 months. And you can bring in an experience, but can you bring in systems and processes and the right subbies in the right places and things like that? And
the data from those exercises isn't going to be known for a couple more years.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's not
the legacy issues that will come, which let's hope it doesn't. And I'm all for them doing that. I just think it's a tough space to go in, especially when you're doing 30-story towers and things like that, right? So what happens if that PM gets sick or moves on, has another better offer and then they're stuck? And it's one of those tricky moments where it's either going to make or break a lot of developers, I think.
Yeah. So I kind of feel like we're operating a business in the market at the moment with high levels of uncertainty.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's just, sort of holding that nerve and just making sure you're reading it sort of for us, it's week by week.
How are you finding the banks approving your current projects?
Fine. They've loosened up a bit.
They have? And are they happy with the lower margins on the fee zones?
Yeah. Surprisingly. And what the surprising thing I've had is the fact that they're more open to builders.
Which is funny. I was going to talk about that in this podcast. Was when we went from being just a builder only to developer builder, I felt like it was I've made it. It's going to be double margins now and all this kind of stuff. But really what's happened is I don't have a fixed price contract because I am the developer and the builder, right? So whatever goes up is my problem.
Yep.
If I was generally going out to a contractor to give you a fixed price contract with a few PSs and some price increases here or there, I'm still paying for the inefficiencies within the building company. They're not when you go to a builder, right?
Correct.
So it hasn't been that great, to be really honest with you, in the last 4 years. It's been a tough market to be in. So, again, going back to the the developers trying to be builders at the same time, they're going to see that and see the inefficiencies and see the slow progress on site and budget blowouts on line items where, I had a CMP contractor on the job start the job and walked on the job the second day because they didn't price it correctly. Full contract in place, the whole lot. We had to go contractually with them, but that, that takes 6 months to go through.
And it doesn't help your immediate issue.
The next contractor was 300 grand higher. Yeah. Some would say that was probably a red flag, being such a difference, and I probably agree with that looking back at it, but this contractor we've used for a lot of years as well. It's not like we've just had a one-off. So right there, 300 grand loss on a $10 million project, that's 3%.
Right there.
Straight away. And that comes straight off the build margin for that developer, But so, it's a tough one. Again, you just got to be smart. I remember being at a lunch one day and Mosaic's owner was talking, and he said he's always tipping into the building company out of the developing company to keep it going, right? And it's bang on.
Yep.
It's the building's hard. It's a tough gig, and
it's a tough gig.
You got to be a certain person to be able to deal with that, and I don't know.
So so the job we got down in Coolangatta at the moment, we've gone down the path of setting up a building business for the client, and just like you said, it only takes one subby to not perform or do something defective. Right. Doesn't matter if there's a contract in place. Like that's a 6-month process to recover it. You've got that immediate problem. If it happens 2 or 3 times on a job, if it's not properly managed, it's going to be, there's going to be significant problems there. So pre-GFC, the banks went away from builder developers. And they went more to third party. It's now swung the other way. So it's interesting to see what's going to happen and how that's going to play out.
I think they've got a mandate to get rid of money as well. So when it slows down, they just go, we've got to pivot.
And they go, our benchmarks maybe need to change and our assessment criteria needs to change. And then,
The other thing that these, going into a building company is the health and safety aspect of it. So it only takes one person to really hurt themselves badly, and then
you're in trouble.
There's if you haven't followed the process right. And that part of the business for us, I've brought in the best of the best from the industry 2 years ago to ensure that we don't have any issues, and we still do, and we get the best of the best. And I won't say big issues, but to the point where the site manager doesn't do the induction at the start of the day because he's busy or something, and it takes one day to do that, and then something happens on site and there's no documentation. And I know multiple builders that we all know on the Gold Coast right now are going through issues with that kind of stuff in court, and that's another risk that they got to think about. Unions as well is another thing.
They hit the nail on the head. So the other job I just mentioned in Cooley is a full-time safety manager. That's a non-negotiable because of that risk. And and it is such a big risk that you've got to pay to cover it.
And that's why I don't do competitive tenders anymore, because a lot of people don't cover those items, right? So we could be 500 grand dearer on a 20 mil project, but we've got full-time safety, and they don't. They might have it spread over 5 jobs.
And he visits, and they visit it once a week.
That's right. So, but
Oh, well, mate, I appreciate your time this morning and being so open and candid about your journey. And you guys have got, you've got a couple of projects. You've got the one in Mermaid.
So I got the Fin, which is getting settled on Friday.
Awesome.
So it's all systems go down at the moment. I was just down there before. There's about 100 people on site trying to finish it. So that'll happen over the next sort of 5 days after Friday, which has been good. And then we got I got 2 at Main Beach, one on Tedder Avenue, which is only a little 3-level, 1 per floor, which again is a tough site. Probably wouldn't do that again. Not a very good development from our side, but we'll make something out of it and move it on. But the one on Rankin Parade, it's 6 units, 3 levels, rooftop pools, looking down the seaway. We've sold 2 now in the 5s, so which is a great effort. That sort of covers the construction piece. So it has been slow, but again, different markets, older generation, I think they want to touch and feel and see the finished product instead of buying off plans. Like when you go to put 500 grand down and not know like I know what I'd be like. I'd like to go and touch and feel it as well.
Well, especially with what's been in the news the last 2 years.
For sure.
It makes sense.
And then we've just secured a site in Surface, which has been sort of a good outcome for us. So 34 2-bedroom apartments, beachside. That they'll sell somewhere between 1.2 to 1.7.
Yeah, right.
So that's that affordability range. We're trying to do like a bit of a Calais rooftop sort of scene, and it's going to be DA approved for short-term accommodation in the holiday space. Nice. So that's going to start in September. And then I've got another project that we've just secured up at Maroochydore in Emporio Place, which is a commercial building. It's 5 levels of office and a childcare centre. So that'll be a build and hold for us, that one. So that's probably us for now until we...
Fantastic.
And Surf Parade, that JV that we're going to be doing with another developer, which I think has been a great experience. It's not 50-50, but it's fair both sides. You know, they're taking a lot of risk on their equity. We're taking a lot of risk on our side as well with how the contract's set up. So we both get rewarded for that. We're doing the sales and marketing and everything on that as well. Sometimes we can jump with other agents, so MPAs on that with us.
Great.
So I'm excited to see that launch in the next sort of 6 weeks.
Got a full book, mate.
Yeah, well, that's kind of us, and then a couple of client jobs, and then our current workbook will complete by the end of the year, and just
looking strong for the next 24 months. It sounds like.
Don't want to be big, just want to be really nimble and solid, and do a good job for everyone, and just keep on turning over 3 or 4 jobs a year, and hopefully just be able to develop them ourselves one day, 100%. But that takes time and equity, as you know.
It does.
So,
well, mate, thanks again for today, and I wish you all the success moving forward.
Thanks, Matt.
Thanks, mate.
Thanks for having me.